continued. "They're not problems. They're just kids who've been through too much trying to figure out how to keep going. Same as all of us." "Joe, I know I ain't their father. I ain't trying to replace nobody. But if you'll let me, I'd like to—" He stopped, struggling for words. "I'd like to be something. Not just the man who bought their mama. Something more." Clara reached across the space between them and took his hand. His fingers were rough and calloused, but they wrapped around hers gently. "You already are," she said. "Something more, I mean. You have been since the first day." They sat like that for a while, hands linked, watching the fire burn low. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin, something warm was growing. The third day, Thomas stopped speaking. Clara noticed it at breakfast, the way her son ate in silence, the way he wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, the way he flinched when Joe walked past him. "Thomas, you all right?" No answer. "Thomas, I asked you a question." "I'm fine." "You don't seem fine." "I said I'm fine." He pushed away from the table and retreated to the corner, wrapping his arms around his knees. Clara started to follow, but Joe caught her arm. "Let me. He's my son." "I know, but I think I know what this is about." Joe's voice was gentle. "Give me a few minutes." Clara hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to go to her child. But something in Joe's face made her nod. Joe crossed the room and sat down on the floor next to Thomas, not too close. The boy didn't look up. "You know," Joe said conversationally, "when I was about your age, my pa used to take me out to check the cattle every morning. Rain or shine, hot or cold. Said it built character." Thomas didn't respond. "I hated it. Hated getting up early. Hated the cold, hated the work. Mostly I hated that he made me do it when my brothers got to sleep in." Still nothing. "Then one day bandits came to our ranch. Killed my ma and pa both. I was 16. Joe's voice was steady, but Clara could hear the old pain beneath it. "After that, I'd have given anything to get up early and check cattle with my father one more time." Thomas's shoulders tensed. "I ain't trying to replace your pa," Joe continued. "Nobody could do that. He was your father, and losing him, that's a wound that don't heal all the way. I know because I got the same wound." Finally, Thomas looked up. His eyes were red. "You don't know anything." "Maybe not, but I know what it feels like to be angry at someone you love for leaving you. To be angry at yourself for being angry. To want to hate them but not being able to, because they're gone, and hating them feels like betraying their memory." Thomas's face crumpled. "He left us. He just left." "I know. He was supposed to protect us. That's what fathers do. They protect their families. And he just walked away." "I know. I hate him." The words came out like they'd been locked away for years. "I hate him so much, and I miss him so much, and I don't know how to feel both things at the same time." Joe reached out slowly and put his hand on Thomas's shoulder. The boy didn't pull away. "You feel both things because both things are true. That's what grief is, holding two impossible feelings at once and not letting either one destroy you." "Does it ever stop hurting?" "No, but it gets easier to carry." Thomas was crying now, tears streaming down his face. "I don't want a new father. I don't want to forget him." "You won't forget him. And I ain't asking to be your father." Joe's voice was rough with emotion. "But maybe I could be your friend. Someone who's got your back when things get hard." Thomas looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "Okay. Okay. Okay. Friends." Joe smiled. It was a small thing, but real. "Friends?" Clara watched from across the room, tears running down her own face. Sarah came up beside her, slipping her hand into her mother's. "He's good, Mama," Sarah whispered. "Mr. Joe, he's really good." "I know, baby, I know." The storm raged on. By the fourth day, they were running low on everything. Wood food patience. The children were climbing the walls, and even Clara's lessons couldn't hold their attention. The cold seeped in through every crack, and the fire seemed to give less heat no matter how much they fed it. "We need more wood," Joe said grimly. "Got maybe half a day's worth left." "Can you get to the woodpile?" "Gonna have to try. If the storm's died down enough, I can make it to the barn and back." "I'll go with you." "No." "I wasn't asking permission." Joe's jaw tightened. "Clara, it's dangerous. Wind's still bad. You could get lost between here and the barn." "Then we tie a rope to the door. I've read about that. Settlers used to do it." "You've read about it?" Despite everything, Joe almost smiled. "You've read about surviving blizzards?" "I've read about everything. It's how I survived before I got here." Clara stood. "We need wood. You can't carry enough by yourself. I'm going." She could see him wanting to argue, could see him weighing her safety against their survival. Finally, he nodded. "All right. But you stay close. You feel my hand, you don't let go. Understand?" "Understood." They bundled up in every piece of clothing they had. Joe tied a rope around his waist, then around Clara's, then secured the other end to the door frame. The children watched with wide eyes. "Sarah, you're in charge," Clara said. "Keep the fire going with what we have left. Keep everyone calm." "Yes, Mama." "We'll be back soon." "Promise." Clara kissed her daughter's forehead. "Promise." Joe opened the door, and the storm hit them like a wall. Clara gasped. She'd never felt cold like this cold that cut through every layer that stole the breath from her lungs. The snow was blinding, the wind deafening. Joe grabbed her hand. "Stay with me." She couldn't speak, could barely see. She just held on and followed one step at a time, the rope their lifeline back to safety. The barn was only 50 feet away, but it felt like miles. They made it. Joe found the woodpile by memory, and they loaded their arms with as much as they could carry. Clara's fingers were numb, her face burning with cold, but she didn't stop. "Enough!" Joe shouted over the wind. "Let's go back!" They followed the rope, hand over hand, Clara clutching the wood against her chest. The cabin door appeared out of the white, and they stumbled inside, collapsing on the floor as Sarah slammed the door behind them. "Mama, Mama, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Clara's teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak. "Just cold. Get me to the fire." They warmed up slowly, wrapped in blankets the children pressed against them on all sides. Joe's hands were blue, and Clara made him hold them near the flames despite his protests. "That was brave," he said quietly when the children had retreated and they were alone by the fire. "Stupid but brave. I couldn't let you go alone. I've done it before. That was before you had someone to come back to." Joe looked at her, really looked the way he had in the saloon that first day. "Clara, I know." She cut him off. "I know we barely know each other. I know this is strange and fast and probably foolish, but these past weeks—" She stopped trying to find the right words. "You've been more of a partner to me than Robert ever was. You listen to me. You respect my opinions. You look at my children and see people, not problems. That's just basic decency." "No, it isn't. Trust me." Clara's voice was fierce. "I spent 6 years married to a man who saw me as decoration, who made decisions without consulting me, who hid things because he didn't think I could handle the truth. You're nothing like that. I ain't exactly a prize, Clara. Failing ranch mountain of debt, powerful enemy trying to destroy us. I've survived worse." She took his hand, still cold but warming. "And I'd rather face all of that with you than face anything alone ever again." Joe was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I never thought I'd say this to anyone again. After Martha, I figured that part of my life was over." He took a breath. "But you make me want things I'd stopped wanting. A future. A family. A reason to fight for something beyond just not losing. Then let's fight together. You sure about me, I mean? About this?" Clara leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, two people who'd forgotten how to hope learning it again. "I'm sure," she whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything." The storm broke on the 5th day. Clara woke to silence. No howling wind, no rattling windows, no constant assault of noise. Just quiet. "Joe." He was already at the door, pulling on his boots. "Storm's past. I need to check the cattle." "I'm coming." "No. Stay with the children. I'll be back soon." "Joe." "Clara." He turned and took her hands. "I need you to stay here. If something's wrong, if the cattle are scattered or dead, the children shouldn't see that. Not yet." She wanted to argue, but she saw the fear in his eyes, the desperate need to protect her from whatever waited outside. "All right, but you come back. You hear me? You come back." "I'll come back." He kissed her forehead. "I promise." She watched him go, trudging through snow that reached his thighs, disappearing into the blinding white of the morning sun on fresh powder. An hour passed, then 2. "Mama," Sarah had joined her at the window. "Where's Mr. Joe? Checking on the cattle. Shouldn't he be back by now?" "The snow's deep, it's slow going." But Clara was worried too. More than worried. By the time 3 hours had passed, she was pacing the cabin like a caged animal. "Sarah, watch the children. I'm going out." "Mama, no." "I have to find him." Clara bundled up and stepped out into the cold. The world was transformed white and glittering and beautiful in the way that deadly things sometimes were. She could see Joe's tracks leading toward the pasture, and she followed them, her heart pounding. She found him at the fence line, or what was left of it. He was standing motionless, staring at a gap in the wire that hadn't been there before. The fence was cut deliberately cleanly in a way that weather couldn't explain. "Joe." He didn't turn around. "Joe, what happened?" "They're gone." His voice was hollow. "Most of them. 20 head at least, maybe more. Scattered during the storm when the fence went down." Clara moved to stand beside him. Through the gap in the fence, she could see tracks, cattle tracks disappearing into the wilderness. The storm didn't do this. No. Blackwood. Had to be. Probably sent men out just before the blizzard hit. Cut the fence, spooked the cattle, let the storm do the rest. Joe's hands were shaking. "We're finished, Clara. Without those cattle, there's no way to make the loan payment. No way to save the ranch." Clara looked at the cut fence, at the tracks, at the man beside her, whose hope was draining away like water from a cracked cup. Something hardened inside her. "No." Joe looked at her. "No, what?" "No, we're not finished." Clara grabbed his arm and made him face her. "This is what he wants. He wants us to give up. To look at this and decide it's impossible. That's how he wins." "Clara, be realistic." "I am being realistic. Realistic is understanding that we still have cattle. Maybe not as many as before, but some. Realistic is knowing that scattered cattle can be found. Realistic is refusing to let one man destroy us because he thinks he's entitled to everything we have." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Clara's voice was fierce. "I understand that you've been fighting alone for too long, that you've forgotten what it's like to have someone in your corner. But you're not alone anymore, Joe. You have me. You have 5 children who are counting on us, and I refuse. I absolutely refuse to tell them that we gave up because some rich man cut a fence." Joe stared at her. The despair in his eyes was battling with something else now, something that looked like hope. "We'd have to find the scattered cattle, in weather like this with no help?" "Then we find help. There have to be other ranchers who hate Blackwood, other people he's hurt." "There are, but they're scared of him." "Then we make them more scared of losing than of him." Clara took his face in her hands. "Listen to me. I didn't survive 2 years of hell to give up now. I didn't cross the country with 5 children to watch everything fall apart. And I didn't fall in love with a stubborn, impossible man just to let him quit when things got hard." Joe's breath caught. You love me. I love you. The words came out easier than she'd expected. God help me, but I do. So you're going to stop standing here feeling sorry for yourself. You're going to come back to that cabin with me. And we're going to figure out how to save this ranch together. Understand? For a long moment, Joe just looked at her. Then slowly he smiled. Yes, ma'am. Good. Now come on. It's cold out here, and we've got work to do. They walked back to the cabin together, hand in hand through the snow. The fence was still cut. The cattle were still scattered. Blackwood was still circling. But for the first time since the storm hit, Clara felt like they might actually have a chance. Not because the odds had improved, because they were fighting together now, and together they were stronger than either of them alone. The next morning, Clara was awake before dawn. She sat at the table with Joe's ledgers spread before her, the fire crackling low, her mind racing through possibilities. Joe found her there when he came out of the main room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You been up all night." "Couldn't sleep." Clara didn't look up from the papers. "I've been thinking." "About?" Blackwood cut that fence before the storm. That means he knew the blizzard was coming. He planned this. So that's evidence. Premeditation. If we can prove he deliberately sabotaged us, proving anything against Blackwood is near impossible. He owns half the law in this territory. Then we go around the law. Clara finally met his eyes. We go to other ranchers, the ones he's hurt. Build a case so strong that even his friends can't ignore it. Joe sat down across from her. You really think that'll work? I think it's our only chance. She pushed a piece of paper toward him. I made a list of names, people you've mentioned, people Mrs. Miller mentioned, anyone who might have a grievance against Blackwood. If even half of them are willing to talk, most of them won't, they're too scared. Then we find the ones who aren't scared, or the ones who are angry enough to stop being scared. Joe studied the list. Elena Santos, you got her name circled. Mrs. Miller mentioned her, said her husband died 3 years ago under suspicious circumstances. Ranch borders Blackwood's land on the south. I know Elena. Good woman. Tough. Joe nodded slowly. Lost her husband in what everyone called an accident. Stampede during roundup. But Elena always said the cattle were spooked deliberately. That's where we start. They rode out that afternoon, leaving Sarah in charge with strict instructions to keep everyone inside. The snow was still deep, but the sky was clear, and Bess plodded through the drifts with patient determination. Elena Santos lived in a small adobe house at the edge of her property. When she opened the door and saw Joe and Clara standing there, her weathered face shifted from surprise to wariness. Josiah Tucker. Been a while. Elena, this is my wife Clara. I heard. Elena's eyes moved to Clara, assessing. The whole valley heard. $3, wasn't it? That's right. Something like respect flickered in Elena's expression. Takes courage to come out here asking for help when you got nothing to bargain with. We're not asking for charity, Clara said. We're asking for alliance. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she stepped aside. Come in. I'll make coffee. The inside of Elena's home was sparse but clean. A crucifix hung on one wall. A faded photograph of a man Clara assumed was her husband sat on a small table near the window. Miguel was a good man. Elena caught Clara looking at the photograph. Best man I ever knew. Blackwood killed him. Can you prove it? No. That's the hell of it. I know it in my bones, but I can't prove a damn thing. Elena poured coffee with hands that shook slightly. His men spooked our cattle during roundup. Miguel got trampled trying to control the herd. Everyone called it an accident. But you don't believe that. Miguel had been working cattle since he was 10 years old. He knew how to handle a stampede. Something scared those animals, something deliberate. Elena's jaw tightened. Week before it happened, Blackwood offered to buy our water rights. Miguel refused. Week after the funeral, he offered again. Lower price. Clara felt sick. Did you sell? I told him to go to hell. Elena's smile was fierce. He's been trying to squeeze me out ever since. But I'm still here. Stubborn, I reckon. We need people like you, Joe said. Stubborn people. People who won't roll over just because Blackwood tells them to. What exactly are you proposing? Clara leaned forward. Blackwood's been hurting ranchers in this valley for years, cutting fences, manipulating prices, buying judges and bankers. But he's only able to do it because everyone's too scared to stand together. And you think you can change that? I think if enough people tell their stories, document his crimes, we can take it to the territorial governor, someone outside Blackwood's influence. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. The territorial governor. You know how many people have tried to go over Blackwood's head? How many? 2 that I know of. One lost his ranch in a fire. The other just disappeared one day. Wife came home and found his horse in the stable, but no sign of him. Clara felt Joe tense beside her, but she kept her voice steady. That was when they went alone. What if they'd had witnesses, documentation, a group of people all telling the same story? Then Blackwood would have to burn down a lot of ranches. Elena's eyes narrowed. Or make a lot of people disappear. Exactly. There's safety in numbers. He can't destroy all of us. Elena was quiet for a long time. She stared into her coffee cup like she was looking for answers there. My son Diego, she said finally. He's 19, good boy, works harder than most men twice his age. If I do this, if I stand against Blackwood publicly, I'm putting him at risk. I know. You got children too, 5 of them. I know that too. And you're still willing to fight. Clara thought about her children, about Sarah's quiet strength and Emma's fearless heart, about Thomas learning to trust again, about Will still recovering, still fragile, about Lily, who just wanted a snowman and a world that didn't hurt. I'm willing to fight because I have children, she said, because I refuse to teach them that bullies always win, that the right thing to do is roll over and accept defeat. She met Elena's eyes. I've lost everything before. My husband, my home, my hope. I rebuilt once. I can do it again if I have to. But I won't go down without a fight. Elena studied her for a long moment. Then she set down her cup and stood. Diego. A young man appeared in the doorway, tall, dark-haired, with his mother's fierce eyes. Diego, saddle the horses. We're riding out to Thomas Gray's place. Ma, Mrs. Tucker here has an idea. Might be crazy. Might get us all killed. Elena smiled grimly. But it's better than dying slow. They spent the next 3 days riding from ranch to ranch, gathering allies. Thomas Gray, who'd lost half his herd to a mysterious illness right after refusing Blackwood's offer. Martha Chen, whose barn had burned the week she outbid Blackwood for land at auction. Jacob Thornton, driven out of business by inflated supply costs. Old Samuel Wright, whose son had been beaten half to death by men who were never caught. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Fear first, then anger, then a slow, cautious hope. You really think this can work? Martha Chen asked, her eyes still haunted by the memory of watching her barn burn. I think together we're stronger than we are alone. Blackwood's got money, power, friends in high places. And we've got truth, numbers, and nothing left to lose. By the end of the 3rd day, they had 11 ranchers willing to stand together, 11 families who'd decided that fighting was better than dying slow. They gathered at Elena's ranch, too many to fit inside, so they stood in the yard, breath misting in the cold air. Here's what we know, Clara said, her voice carrying in the clear winter air. Blackwood has been systematically destroying ranchers in this valley for at least 5 years. He's used sabotage, price manipulation, intimidation, and probably worse. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Each of us alone doesn't have enough evidence to prove anything, but together we have a pattern, a clear record of his crimes. She held up the ledger she'd been compiling. I've documented every incident, dates, losses, witnesses. This is enough to demand an investigation. Investigation by who? Jacob Thornton's voice was skeptical. The sheriff's in Blackwood's pocket. The territorial governor isn't. Neither is the federal marshal's office. Clara looked around the group. We're not just talking about local crimes. We're talking about fraud, conspiracy, possibly murder. That's federal territory. You know how to reach the federal marshal? No, but I know how to write a letter that'll make him want to reach us. Elena stepped forward. I'm in, whatever it takes. Me too, Thomas Gray said. One by one the others nodded. 11 voices, 11 families, 11 people who decided to stop being afraid. Then we start tonight, Clara said. Everyone writes down their story, every detail they can remember. We compile it all, make copies, send one to the territorial governor, one to the federal marshal, one to the newspapers in Cheyenne. The newspapers. Public pressure. Blackwood's power depends on people being afraid to speak. Once his crimes are public knowledge, that power shrinks. Joe had been quiet through most of the meeting, watching Clara work. Now he spoke up. There's something else we need to discuss. The cattle. Everyone turned to look at him. My fence was cut during the storm. Lost at least 20 heads scattered into the wilderness. Without them, I can't make my loan payment. But more than that. He looked around the group. How many of you lost cattle in that blizzard? Hands went up, more than half. Blackwood did the same thing to all of us. Cut fences, spooked herds, let the storm do his dirty work. Joe's voice was hard. Some of those cattle are still out there, scattered but alive. If we work together, pool our resources, we might be able to round them up. That's a lot of ground to cover, Samuel Wright said. It is, but we've got a lot of people. Joe looked at Clara. My wife figured out that Blackwood controls the stockyard in town. That's how he keeps prices low. He's the only buyer, so he sets the terms. So, what do we do? Clara stepped forward again. There's a cattle buyer in Cheyenne who pays fair market value. If we can get our cattle there, Cheyenne's 100 miles away. I know, but if we combine our herds, share the work. A cattle drive, in winter. Thomas Gray shook his head. That's suicide. It's a chance, Clara said. Maybe our only one. Blackwood's expecting us to sell through his stockyard at his prices. He's expecting us to slowly bleed out until we have no choice but to accept his offers. But if we bypass him entirely, he'll try to stop us. Let him try. Joe's voice was quiet but fierce. I'm done letting that man dictate my life. Done waiting for him to finish what he started. If we're going to lose everything anyway, I'd rather lose it fighting. The silence stretched. Clara could see people weighing the risks, calculating the odds. Then Elena spoke. Diego and I will ride with you. So will I, Thomas Gray said. One by one, the others committed. Not everyone, some had families they couldn't leave, cattle too scattered to gather. But enough. Enough to make it possible. We leave in 3 days, Joe said. That gives us time to round up what cattle we can find, make preparations. Anyone who can't ride can help with the documentation, get those letters ready to send. The meeting broke up, but the energy remained. For the first time in years, these people had hope. Dangerous hope maybe, foolish hope, but hope nonetheless. That night back at the cabin, Clara sat with her children and explained what was happening. She didn't sugarcoat it. They'd been through too much for that. We're going to fight, she said. Mr. Joe and I. We're going to try to save this ranch and stop a bad man from hurting more people. Is it dangerous? Sarah asked. Yes. Could you get hurt? Yes. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I want to help. Sarah. I'm 14. I can ride. I can help with the cattle. Her jaw was set in a way that reminded Clara painfully of herself. You're always telling us that Whitmores don't give up, that we stand tall. How can we stand tall if we hide here while you do all the fighting? Clara looked at Joe. He shrugged slightly. Your call. The younger children need to stay here, Clara said finally. Someone has to take care of them, keep the home fire burning. That's important work too. Then I'll ride with you. Sarah's voice was firm. Emma can watch the others. She's old enough. I am, Emma agreed, bouncing on her toes. I can do it, Mama. I'll take care of everyone. And me, Thomas said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He'd been silent through the whole conversation, his face unreadable. I want to go too. Thomas. I know I'm only 9. I know I'm not as strong as Sarah, but I can help. He looked at Joe. You said we were friends. Friends help each other, right? Joe crouched down to Thomas's level. That they do. But this is dangerous work. Your mama needs to know you're safe. Mama needs to know we're not scared, Thomas countered. She needs to know we believe in her, in both of you. Clara felt tears threatening. Her son, her angry, grieving, scared son, was trying to be brave for her. Thomas, baby. I'm not a baby. But his voice cracked when he said it. I want to do something. I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of waiting for bad things to happen. Joe put his hand on Thomas's shoulder. You know what, I think you might be the bravest person in this room. Really? Really? And I think... Joe looked at Clara. I think maybe Thomas could help with something important. Not riding with the herd, but something else. What? The documentation, the letters. Joe turned back to Thomas. Your mama needs someone to help organize all the papers, make sure everything's written down proper. Someone she can trust. Thomas's face lit up. I can do that. I can write good, Mama taught me. Then that's your job, keeper of the records. Most important job there is. Clara watched her son straighten with pride, watched the fear in his eyes transform into purpose. Joe had done that, given Thomas something to hold on to when everything else was falling apart. All right, Clara said. Sarah rides with us. Thomas keeps the records. Emma watches the little ones. She looked at each of her children in turn. We're all going to fight. In our own ways. Together. Together. Lily echoed, not entirely understanding, but wanting to be part of it. Together. Will agreed, his voice still weak, but determined. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara found Joe standing outside, staring up at the stars. The cold was brutal, but he didn't seem to notice. You gave Thomas something today, she said, coming to stand beside him. Something important. Just a job. More than that. You gave him a way to be part of this, to feel like he matters. Joe was quiet for a moment. I remember what it was like to feel useless when everything was falling apart. After my folks died, my brothers handled everything. I was just the kid in the way, more than helpful. He shook his head. Nobody should feel like that, especially not a child who's already lost so much. Clara slipped her hand into his. His fingers were cold, but they wrapped around hers gratefully. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. What if this doesn't work? What if we lose everything anyway? Then we lose it fighting. Joe turned to face her. But Clara, even if the worst happens, we won't have lost everything. What do you mean? I mean, he struggled for words. Before you came, I was just surviving. Going through the motions, waiting to fail. Now I got something worth fighting for. People who depend on me. A family. Joe, I ain't saying it right. He pulled her closer. What I mean is, you and those kids, you already saved me. Whatever happens with the ranch with Blackwood, you gave me a reason to keep going. That's not nothing. Clara reached up and touched his face. When did you get so wise? Must be rubbing off from my wife. She laughed despite everything, despite the fear and the uncertainty and the impossible odds. We should go inside, she said. It's freezing. In a minute. Joe pulled her into his arms, holding her close against the cold. Just let me have this. 1 minute of peace before everything gets hard. They stood there together, two people who'd found each other at the worst possible time, and somehow made it work. The stars burned overhead, cold and distant. The future was uncertain. Tomorrow would bring challenges they couldn't predict. But for one moment, they had this: each other. Hope. $3 and a whole lot of stubborn. The morning of the cattle drive, Blackwood came to the ranch. Clara saw him first, a figure on horseback emerging from the tree line, followed by 3 other riders. She felt her stomach drop. "Joe." He was already moving, positioning himself between the approaching riders and the cabin where the children were. "Stay behind me. I will not." "Clara, please." She stayed, but she didn't hide. Blackwood reined in his horse a few feet from them. His smile was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. "Tucker, Mrs. Tucker, I heard you've been busy. News travels fast. In a valley this small, everything travels fast." Blackwood's gaze swept over the ranch, the mended fences, the gathered cattle, the signs of preparation. "Planning a trip, I see. That's our business." "Ah, but you're making it everyone's business, aren't you? Riding around stirring up trouble, convincing good people to join your little crusade." Joe's hand moved toward his gun. "Say what you came to say." "I came to give you one last chance." Blackwood's voice hardened. "Walk away. Take my offer. I'll even raise it to $1,000. Start fresh somewhere else. No one has to get hurt." "And if we don't?" "Then things become unpleasant." Blackwood's eyes slid to Clara. "For everyone." Joe stepped forward, his whole body tense. "Are you threatening my wife?" "I'm stating facts. A cattle drive through mountain passes in winter. Dangerous territory. Things can happen. Accidents." His smile returned. "Especially when there are children involved." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. He knew. He knew about Sarah planning to ride with them. "You son of a—" Joe reached for his gun. "Joe, no." Clara grabbed his arm. "That's what he wants." "Listen to your wife, Tucker. She's smarter than you." Blackwood chuckled. "Shoot me, and my men shoot you both. Then what happens to those 5 children inside?" Clara's mind was racing. He was trying to provoke them, trying to give himself an excuse. But there had to be another way. "Mr. Blackwood." She stepped forward, putting herself between the 2 men. "You're a businessman. Let's talk business." Blackwood's eyebrows rose. "Now that's interesting. You want this land for the water rights. That's your primary objective, correct? Among other things. Then let's negotiate. Give us 6 months. If we can't make the loan payment by then, we'll sell to you at your original offer, $500. "Clara." Joe's voice was strangled. "But," she continued, "if we do make the payment, you leave us alone. Permanently. No more sabotage. No more price manipulation. No more threats." Blackwood studied her. "You're offering me worse terms than I already have. In 3 months the bank forecloses, and I get the land for less. But that's uncertain. Banks can be unpredictable. Loans can be renegotiated. Things can change." Clara kept her voice steady. "I'm offering you a guarantee. We fail, you win. Clean and simple. And if you succeed, then you've lost nothing but time. You've still got your empire. We've still got our tiny ranch. Everyone goes home." Blackwood was quiet for a long moment. Clara could feel Joe vibrating with tension beside her, could sense Blackwood's men waiting for a signal. "You're interesting, Mrs. Tucker," Blackwood said finally. "More interesting than your husband, certainly. Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe." He gathered his reins. 6 months. But understand this, if I even suspect you're going to the authorities, if I hear one word about federal marshals or territorial governors, the deal's off, and the consequences will be severe. Understood?" "I don't think you do understand." "Not really." Blackwood's eyes went cold. "I've spent 20 years building what I have. I won't let a $3 bride and a failing rancher take it away from me." He wheeled his horse and rode off, his men following. Clara watched them go, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. "What the hell was that?" Joe's voice was barely controlled. Buying time. You just promised him the ranch. I promised him the ranch if we fail, and we're not going to fail. Clara turned to face him. He would have killed us, Joe. Right here, right now. Made it look like an accident. I saw it in his eyes. So you bargained our future? I saved our lives. Her voice cracked. I saved our children's lives. Because dead parents can't fight for anything. Joe stared at her. The anger slowly drained from his face, replaced by something else. Understanding, maybe. Or fear. You're right, he said quietly. You're right. I wasn't thinking. No, you were being brave. Stupid brave. Clara's legs felt weak. I love that about you, but it was going to get us killed. So what now? Now we do exactly what we planned. We round up the cattle, we drive them to Cheyenne, we sell them at fair market value. She took a breath. And we send those letters anyway. But you promised. I promised not to go to the authorities if he left us alone. He threatened our children, Joe. He's not going to leave us alone. Clara's jaw tightened. We just needed time. Now we have it. 6 months instead of 3. Joe shook his head slowly. You're terrifying, you know that. I learned from the best. She took his hand. 2 years of fighting alone. You learned to think fast. Clara Tucker, strategic genius. Clara Tucker, desperate mother who got lucky. She looked toward the cabin where 5 faces were pressed against the window watching. Let's get inside. We've got a cattle drive to plan. That night while the children slept, Clara wrote 3 letters. 1 to the territorial governor, 1 to the federal marshal's office, 1 to the Cheyenne newspaper. Each contained a summary of Blackwood's crimes, names of witnesses, dates and details carefully documented. She sealed them and gave them to Elena Santos, who would mail them from a town 50 miles away, far enough that Blackwood's spies wouldn't see. This is dangerous, Elena said. If he finds out, then we're no worse off than we were before. Clara's voice was steady. But if it works, if even one of those letters reaches someone who cares, it could change everything. You really believe that? I believe in trying. Sometimes that's all we have. Elena tucked the letters into her coat. You're braver than you know, Mrs. Tucker. I'm not brave. I'm terrified. That's the same thing. Elena smiled grimly. The brave ones are always terrified. They just don't let it stop them. Clara watched her ride off into the darkness, carrying letters that could save them or destroy them. She stood there until Elena disappeared from sight. Then she went inside to her family, to the man she loved, and the children who depended on her, to the impossible fight they'd chosen to wage. Tomorrow the cattle drive would begin. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight they had each other. And that was enough. The cattle drive began at dawn. 32 head of cattle, 11 riders, 100 miles of frozen wilderness between them and Cheyenne. Clara sat astride her horse at the front of the column, Sarah beside her, watching the herd begin to move. You ready? Joe asked, pulling his horse alongside hers. No. Good. Neither am I. He almost smiled. Let's go save our future. The first day was brutal. The snow was deep, the cattle were skittish, and Clara's body screamed with every mile. She'd ridden before, but never like this, never for hours on end, never through drifts that reached the horses' bellies, never with so much riding on every step. By nightfall, they'd covered barely 15 miles. The riders made camp in a shallow valley, the cattle huddled together for warmth. Clara's legs shook so badly when she dismounted that Joe had to catch her. Easy. I'm fine. You're exhausted. We all are. She steadied herself against his shoulder. How's Sarah? Better than you, I reckon. Youth's got its advantages. Clara looked across the camp to where her daughter was helping Elena prepare food. Sarah moved with purpose, her face tired but determined. When had she grown up so much? She's amazing, Clara said quietly. Takes after her mama. She takes after herself. I just tried to get out of the way. That night, huddled around a small fire, Clara listened to the other ranchers talk. Stories emerged, stories of loss and struggle, of Blackwood's cruelty, of dreams, destroyed and rebuilt. These people had suffered, but they hadn't broken. My grandfather came to this territory with nothing but a wagon and a rifle. Thomas Gray said, his weathered face lit by firelight. Built his ranch from bare ground. My father expanded it. I was supposed to pass it to my children. His voice cracked. Blackwood took that from me. He tried to take it, Elena corrected. You're still here. We're all still here. For now. For now is all any of us have. Clara surprised herself by speaking. Every day we're still fighting is a victory. Every mile we cover is proof that he doesn't own us. Pretty words, Mrs. Tucker. They're not just words. Clara met Thomas Gray's eyes. I know what it feels like to lose everything. 2 years ago, I had a home, a husband, a future. I lost it all in one night. And I thought my life was over. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't. She looked around the fire at the faces watching her. It was the beginning of something else. Something harder, but more real. I found strength I didn't know I had. I found people who saw my value when I'd stopped seeing it myself. Her eyes found Joe's across the flames. I found love I'd stopped believing in. The camp was quiet. Snow fell softly around them, white and cold and strangely peaceful. So when I say we're still fighting, I mean it. Not because I'm naive, not because I think winning is guaranteed, but because fighting is the only way forward, and forward is the only direction that matters. Elena raised her cup. To fighting. To fighting, the others echoed. The second day brought worse weather. Wind howled across the open plains, driving snow into their faces, threatening to scatter the herd. Clara lost feeling in her fingers by mid-morning and didn't get it back until nightfall. But they kept moving, mile after mile, hour after hour. Sarah rode beside her mother without complaint, handling the cattle with a natural skill that made Clara's heart swell with pride. Mama? Sarah's voice was nearly lost in the wind. Yes, baby. When this is over, when we're safe, are you going to marry Mr. Joe? I mean, really marry him. Clara almost smiled. We're already married. You know what I mean. Like with a wedding and everything. Like you and Papa had. The mention of Robert sent a familiar pang through Clara's chest. But it was duller now, less sharp. Time and distance and love had done their work. Would you be all right with that? Clara asked. With me loving someone else? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Papa left us. He chose to leave. Mr. Joe stayed. He's choosing to stay every single day. Sarah? I'm not angry anymore, Mama. I was for a long time. But now I just feel sad. Sad that Papa couldn't see what he had. Sad that he missed watching us grow up. Sarah's voice was steady. I think if he could see us now, he'd want you to be happy. He wasn't strong enough to make you happy himself, but he'd want someone else to do it. Clara's eyes burned with tears that froze on her cheeks before they could fall. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. They rode on in silence. But something had shifted. Something had healed. On the third day, Blackwood's men found them. Clara spotted them, first riders on the ridge above, silhouetted against the gray sky. 4 of them, maybe 5. Watching. Joe? I see them. What do we do? Keep moving. Don't show fear. The riders followed them for hours, maintaining distance, but never disappearing. Clara felt their eyes on her back like a physical weight. Every rustle, every shadow made her flinch. They're trying to scare us, Elena said, riding up beside Clara. Make us doubt. Turn back. Is it working? You tell me. Clara looked at the herd still moving forward, at the riders around her tired but determined, at Joe, his jaw set, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "No," she said. "It's not working." That night, they posted guards. Joe took the first watch, and Clara couldn't sleep knowing he was out there in the dark alone. "You should rest." Sarah's voice came from beside her. "You'll need your strength tomorrow." "I can't." "Then at least lie down. Close your eyes." Clara tried. The ground was hard and cold beneath her bedroll. The wind bit through every layer of clothing. But eventually, exhaustion won out over fear, and she slept. She woke to gunfire. Clara was on her feet before she was fully conscious, her heart hammering. Around her, the camp erupted into chaos. Cattle were lowing in panic. Horses were screaming. People were shouting. "Sarah, Sarah!" "I'm here, Mama." Her daughter appeared out of the darkness, rifle in hand. "Where's Mr. Joe?" "I don't know." More shots. Clara couldn't tell who was shooting or from where. She grabbed Sarah's arm and pulled her behind a wagon. "Stay down." But the cattle, "Stay down." The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it had started. In the ringing silence that followed, Clara heard someone groan. "Joe." Her voice was hoarse. "Joe." "Here." His voice came from the edge of camp. "I'm okay, but Thomas is hit." Clara ran toward his voice, Sarah following despite orders. She found Joe kneeling beside Thomas Gray, pressing his hands against the older man's shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. "How bad?" "Bad enough." Joe's face was grim. "Bullet went clean through, but he's losing blood. We need to stop and treat him. We stop, they win. That's what they want." Clara looked at Thomas Gray. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. But his eyes found hers, and she saw the same stubborn fire she'd seen in every rancher who'd joined them. "Keep moving," Thomas rasped. "Don't stop for me." "Mr. Gray, I didn't come this far to be the reason we fail." He grabbed Clara's hand with surprising strength. "You keep those cattle moving, Mrs. Tucker. You get them to Cheyenne. That's all that matters now." "We're not leaving you." "Didn't say leave me. Said keep moving." His grip tightened. "Elena knows field medicine. She'll patch me up, but the herd has to keep going." Clara looked at Joe. He nodded slowly. "He's right. We stop, we lose the cattle to cold or another attack. We have to keep pushing." "But—" "I'll stay with Thomas," Elena said, appearing beside them. "Diego can take my place with the herd. You go, all of you." "Elena, I can't ask—" "You're not asking. I'm telling." Elena's voice was fierce. "Go, save our ranches. Make this mean something." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to find another way, but there wasn't one. There never had been. "We'll send help back," she promised. "The moment we reach Cheyenne." "I know you will." Thomas Gray's eyes were closing. "Now go, before those bastards regroup." They moved out before dawn, leaving Elena and Thomas behind, with 2 horses and enough supplies to survive a few days. The herd was smaller now. They'd lost 6 head to the chaos, but still substantial enough to make a difference. 26 cattle, 8 riders, 60 miles still to go. Clara rode beside Joe in silence, the weight of what they'd left behind pressed on her chest like a stone. "He'll be okay," Joe said quietly. "You don't know that." "No, but I believe it." He reached over and took her hand. "Same way I believe we're going to make it. Sometimes belief is all we have. And when belief isn't enough, then we fight until it is." They pushed hard that day, harder than before. The cattle were tired, the horses were tired, everyone was tired. But fear drove them forward. Fear of Blackwood's men returning, fear of losing everything they'd fought for. By nightfall, they'd covered 20 miles, the most they'd managed in a single day. 40 miles left, Joe said as they made camp. 2 days, maybe less if we push. Can we push that hard? We have to. Sarah came to sit beside Clara, leaning her head against her mother's shoulder. The girl was exhausted. They all were. Mama. Yes, baby. I'm glad I came. Clara wrapped her arm around her daughter. Me too. Even with everything that's happened. Especially with everything that's happened. Clara pressed a kiss to Sarah's hair. You showed me something these past few days. Something I'd forgotten. What? That I don't have to protect you from everything. That you're strong enough to face hard things and come out the other side. Clara's voice was thick. I spent so long trying to shield you from the world. I forgot that you need to learn to stand in it. Papa always said the world was cruel. It can be, but it can also be beautiful, and brave, and full of people worth fighting for. Clara looked around the camp at the ranchers who'd risked everything at Joe feeding the fire at the cattle that represented their last chance. Your papa only saw the cruelty. He couldn't see the rest. But you can. I'm learning to. Thanks to you. Thanks to all of you. The fourth day dawned clear and cold. No sign of Blackwood's men. Clara didn't know if they'd given up or were simply waiting for another chance, but she refused to let fear slow them down. They reached the outskirts of Cheyenne by mid-afternoon. The city rose out of the plains like a mirage buildings and smoke, and the distant whistle of trains. We made it, Sarah breathed. Almost. Clara's eyes were scanning the horizon. Let's not celebrate until the cattle are sold and the money's in our hands. The stockyard was exactly as Clara had imagined organized chaos, the smell of animals and money men shouting and bargaining. She found the buyer Joe had heard about, a man named Harrison who dealt with Chicago markets. 26 head, Harrison said, examining the cattle with a practiced eye. Good condition considering what they've been through. I heard about your drive. News travels. Can you give us a fair price? I can give you market price. $25 a head. Clara did the math quickly. $650. Enough to make a significant dent in their debt, but not enough to pay it off entirely. That's for these cattle, she said. But we represent 11 ranches. Combined, we could supply you with 100 head or more in the spring. Harrison's eyes lit up. 100 head? If you're willing to work with us, direct sale, fair prices, no middlemen. No middlemen meaning no local stockyards? Exactly. Harrison studied her. You're trying to bypass someone with local power. We're trying to survive. Same thing in my experience. Harrison smiled slowly. All right, Mrs. Tucker, $25 a head for these cattle and a contract for spring delivery at market rate. I'll even advance you a percentage as good faith. How much? Another 200? That's $850 total. Clara extended her hand. Deal. They shook, and Clara felt something shift in her chest. Not victory, not yet, but possibility. The ride back was faster without the cattle to manage. Clara pushed them hard, desperate to reach Elena and Thomas to get home to her children, to see if their gamble had paid off. They found Elena and Thomas 2 days out from Bitter Creek. Thomas was weak but alive, his wound beginning to heal under Elena's careful attention. You did it, Thomas said when Clara told him about the sale. You actually did it. We all did it, together. No. Thomas shook his head. You. This was your plan, your determination. We just followed. Following takes courage too. Maybe. But leading takes more. Thomas's eyes were serious. Don't sell yourself short, Mrs. Tucker. What you've done, what you're doing, it's going to change this valley. I can feel it. They reached Bitter Creek in the early evening. Clara went straight to the bank, $850 in her pocket, determination in her heart. The new bank manager, Sykes, looked up when she walked in. His face went pale. Mrs. Tucker. Mr. Sykes. Clara placed the money on his desk. I'm here to make a payment on our loan. I don't understand. Mr. Blackwood said, I don't care what Mr. Blackwood said. Clara's voice was ice. This is $850. I want a receipt and I want a new payment schedule. We'll have the rest within 3 months. Sykes stared at the money like it might bite him. This is highly irregular. So is cutting fences during blizzards. So is shooting unarmed ranchers on cattle drives. So is systematically destroying everyone who stands in your employer's way. Clara leaned forward. The territorial governor has received a full accounting of Mr. Blackwood's activities. So has the federal marshal's office. So has every major newspaper in Wyoming. Sykes went even paler. You can't. I already have. Clara smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Now about that receipt. She walked out of the bank with documentation of their payment and a revised loan schedule that gave them 6 more months to pay the balance. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Joe was waiting outside with Sarah. How'd it go? We're not saved yet, but we're not finished either. That's enough for now. They rode home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. When the cabin came into view, small and weathered and absolutely perfect, Clara felt tears streaming down her face. Emma burst out the door before they'd even stopped Will and Lily right behind her. Thomas was at the window, his face breaking into a smile when he saw them. Mama, you're back!" Clara dismounted and caught her children in her arms, all of them at once holding on like she'd never let go. "We're back. We're home." "Did you do it? Did you save the ranch?" "We did." She looked at Joe over their heads. "All of us. Together." That night, after the children were fed and bathed, and finally blessedly asleep, Clara and Joe sat on the porch watching stars appear one by one. "I got a question," Joe said. "Go ahead. When this started, when I bid $3 on you in that saloon, did you ever think we'd end up here?" Clara laughed softly. "I thought you were crazy. I thought I was crazy for going along with it. I thought we'd both be dead by Christmas. And now I think—" She paused, searching for the right words. "I think sometimes the craziest things are the ones that save us. I think sometimes you have to bet everything on a stranger just to find out what you're made of." "And what are you made of, Clara Tucker?" "Same thing as you. Stubbornness and hope and a refusal to quit." She took his hand. "And love. More love than I thought I had left." Joe was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to marry you again." "We're already married." "Legally, yeah, but I want to do it right, in the church with the whole town watching. I want everyone to know that I didn't just buy a wife for $3. I found a partner, a family, everything I'd stopped believing I deserved." Clara's heart swelled. "Joe Tucker, are you proposing to me?" "I reckon I am." "Then I reckon I'm saying yes." He kissed her, then soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Clara was smiling. When? Spring. When the snow melts and the world starts over. Joe's eyes were bright. "We'll invite everyone, all the ranchers who stood with us, everyone in town who didn't bow to Blackwood. We'll show them what fighting for something looks like." And Blackwood. Blackwood's finished. He just doesn't know it yet. 2 weeks later, the federal marshal arrived in Bitter Creek. Clara watched from the general store as 3 men in long coats rode into town, their badges glinting in the winter sun. Behind her, Mrs. Miller let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be. Someone actually came. Someone had to eventually. Blackwood won't go quietly. No, he won't." The investigation took a month. The marshal interviewed every rancher who'd signed Clara's documents, examined bank records, traced patterns of fraud and intimidation that went back years. Blackwood's lawyers fought back, of course, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, Cornelius Blackwood was arrested on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to murder in the death of Miguel Santos. His assets were frozen. His businesses were seized. His empire crumbled overnight. "It's really over," Elena said, standing beside Clara as they watched Blackwood being led away in chains. "I never thought I'd see this day." "I didn't either. Not really." Clara's voice was quiet. "I just refused to accept any other outcome." "That's not the same thing." "Maybe not, but it got us here." The wedding happened in April, just as Joe had promised. The snow had melted, wildflowers were pushing through the mud, and the whole valley turned out to celebrate. Clara wore a dress Elena had helped her make, simple but beautiful white, with delicate embroidery at the collar. Her children stood beside her at the altar. Sarah holding Lily Emma, bouncing with excitement, Thomas and Will looking uncomfortable, but proud in their borrowed suits, and Joe. Joe in his best clothes, his face clean-shaven, his eyes full of something that made Clara's heart stop. "We are gathered here today." Father McKenna began to witness something rare and precious. Clara heard the words, but she was looking at Joe. At the man who'd spent his last $3 on a stranger because he saw something in her worth saving. At the partner who'd stood beside her through blizzards and cattle drives and fights that should have been impossible to win. At the love she'd stopped believing in until she found it in the most unexpected place. "Do you, Clara Margaret Whitmore Tucker, take this man?" "I do." Father McKenna blinked. "I hadn't finished the question." "I know, but the answer's always going to be yes." Clara squeezed Joe's hands. "No matter what comes, no matter how hard it gets, yes." Joe's smile lit up his whole face. "I do too, in case anyone was wondering." The congregation laughed. Father McKenna shook his head, but couldn't hide his own smile. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Again." He gestured to Joe. "You may kiss your bride." Joe did, thoroughly. The cheers were deafening. Afterward, at the celebration that spilled out of the church and into the street, Clara found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Ranchers who'd fought beside them. Townspeople who'd quietly resisted Blackwood's influence. Even Mrs. Miller, her usual frown softened into something almost warm. "You did good," Mrs. Miller said, pressing Clara's hand. "Better than anyone expected." "I had help. You had stubbornness. That's rarer than help." The older woman's eyes were suspiciously bright. "You reminded this town what fighting for something looks like. That's not nothing. It's not everything either." "No, but it's a start." Late that evening, after the last guests had gone and the children had finally collapsed into exhausted sleep, Clara and Joe stood on their porch. The stars blazed overhead, cold and eternal. "Someday," Joe said. "Someday. 3 months ago I was ready to give up, accept defeat. Let Blackwood take everything." He shook his head slowly. "Then you walked into my life. You paid $3 for me. Best investment I ever made." Clara laughed. "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." Joe turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Clara Tucker, you saved me. Not just the ranch me. You reminded me that fighting was worth it. That hope wasn't just foolishness. That family." His voice cracked. "That family was something I could still have." "You saved me too," Clara whispered. "You looked at a woman with 5 children and more baggage than anyone could carry, and you saw something worth fighting for. I saw you. That's the same thing." They held each other in the darkness, two people who'd found something precious in the most unlikely circumstances. "What happens now?" Clara asked. "Now we build. We've got a ranch to run cattle, to raise children to teach. We've got a whole future to figure out. Together. Together." Joe pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Always together." From inside the cabin, Clara heard one of the children stir. Lily probably having a dream. In a moment, she'd need to go check. In a moment, Real life would resume with all its demands and complications. But right now, she had this. A man who loved her. Children who were safe and healthy and learning to hope again. A home that belonged to them, won through sacrifice and stubbornness, and sheer refusal to quit. $3 and a leap of faith. It had been enough. It would always be enough. Because some things couldn't be measured in money. Some things, love, family, the courage to start over, were worth everything you had and more. Clara Tucker had learned that lesson the hard way, and she would never forget it.